Hey, BlizzCon, how you guys doing? This is the State of the Game panel for Heroes of the Storm. I'm Matthew Cooper. I am the lead balance designer on Heroes of the Storm. And up here with me today, we have Brett Crawford and Alex Diamond, two of our other balance designers, and of course, Dustin Browder, our game director. So are you guys kind of curious, who's considered a little overpowered right now in the Nexus? Well, it might not be who you would expect, but let's take a look. Lily and Murky. These characters are a little bit underrated. These are the faces of terror in the Nexus. So Lily is our highest win rate support character. She's been trending up quite a bit the last few months, and this is likely due to seeing characters like Raynor and Thrall being played more often. She has the great ability to shut them down with blind. And Murky, he's a specialist character that has had a high win rate for about a year now. Now, we don't see him a lot in competitive play at tournaments like this at BlizzCon, so he's definitely a character we're aware of, but he's not our highest priority to fix. Let's talk about what we're going to discuss today in this panel. I'm going to start by giving you guys a recap of 2015. Brett will talk about some of the balance tools we have and how we can use those. Alex is going to discuss one of our newer heroes coming soon, who you guys might have seen, and some of the challenges he presented. I'll talk a little bit about some future updates that we're planning for balance. And Dustin will close us out about talking about matchmaking and some online updates. All right, so 2015, this was a huge year for us. We actually started the year in technical alpha. We went beta in January, and we launched the game worldwide on June 2nd, only a few months ago, really. This has been our first real year for esports. We had our Heroes of the Dorm tournament take place in April. And this was a huge collegiate tournament with schools from all over North America competing for college tuition. And this was broadcast nationally on television. The last few months, we've also had our Road to BlizzCon tournaments taking place. And regions from all over the world have been competing to be here today at BlizzCon, and the finals are happening in just a few hours. We've added a ton of new content to the game, with 11 new heroes this year alone. That brings us to 43 total. We're also showing 3 more here at BlizzCon today. Every time we add a new hero to the Nexus, we're adding to existing strategies, or in some cases, hey, BlizzCon, how you guys doing? This is the State of the Game panel for Heroes of the Storm. I'm Matthew Cooper. I am the lead balance designer on Heroes of the Storm. And up here with me today, we have Brett Crawford and Alex Diamond, two of our other balance designers, and of course, Dustin Browder, our game director. So are you guys kind of curious, who's considered a little overpowered right now in the Nexus? Well, it might not be who you would expect, but let's take a look. Lily and Murky. These characters are a little bit underrated. These are the faces of terror in the Nexus. So Lily is our highest win rate support character. She's been trending up quite a bit the last few months, and this is likely due to seeing characters like Raynor and Thrall being played more often. She has the great ability to shut them down with blind. And Murky, he's a specialist character that has had a high win rate for about a year now. Now, we don't see him a lot in competitive play at tournaments like this at BlizzCon, so he's definitely a character we're aware of, but he's not our highest priority to fix. Let's talk about what we're going to discuss today in this panel. I'm going to start by giving you guys a recap of 2015. Brett will talk about some of the balance tools we have and how we can use those. Alex is going to discuss one of our newer heroes coming soon, who you guys might have seen, and some of the challenges he presented. I'll talk a little bit about some future updates that we're planning for balance. And Dustin will close us out about talking about matchmaking and some online updates. All right, so 2015, this was a huge year for us. We actually started the year in technical alpha. We went beta in January, and we launched the game worldwide on June 2nd, only a few months ago, really. This has been our first real year for esports. We had our Heroes of the Dorm tournament take place in April. And this was a huge collegiate tournament with schools from all over North America competing for college tuition. And this was broadcast nationally on television. The last few months, we've also had our Road to BlizzCon tournaments taking place. And regions from all over the world have been competing to be here today at BlizzCon, and the finals are happening in just a few hours. We've added a ton of new content to the game, with 11 new heroes this year alone. That brings us to 43 total. We're also showing 3 more here at BlizzCon today. Every time we add a new hero to the Nexus, we're adding to existing strategies, or in some cases, even creating some new strategies for our players. On the Battleground side, we've also added 4 new Battlegrounds. That brings us to 9 total. We're also showing Towers of Doom here at BlizzCon, a whole new Battleground, and even Arena Mode, which is a whole new way to play. If you're curious to know more about Battlegrounds or the Arena, we have a Battleground panel taking place on the main stage later today. So we love to add all this new content. We love to get online with you guys on patch day, play with you, get your feedback, oftentimes learn many things. But this does create some challenges for us, especially that we're so focused on making sure the game is as fair and fun as possible. So I'm going to bring up Brett now to talk about how we accomplish that.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, BlizzCon. My name is Brett Crawford. I'm a balance designer for Heroes of the Storm. I'm going to be talking to you today a little bit about the tools we use to balance the game and how we utilize them in our day-to-day jobs. And if you ask a player whether or not a hero is actually balanced, the first thing they normally point to is its win rate. Our goal is to keep heroes between 45 and 55%. As you can see on the screen, we are showing you the highest and lowest win rate heroes of each archetype today. You'll notice that the Lost Vikings are currently on the top at 57%, while Abathur and Stitches are bringing up the rear at 44. Now you're probably saying to yourself, this seems like a pretty easy goal to keep, right? Buff the heroes that are below 45% and nerf the ones that are above 55. Well, it's not that easy for a lot of reasons. One of the big ones is that these win rates are not static. These can change by 4 or 5% depending on the filters we use to look at the data. Things such as the region you're from, whether you're from Europe, China, or America, how many games you've played with your hero. Skill ranks, are you brand new to the Nexus, or are you a veteran player? And the big one, of course, quick match or ranked play. All of these things are things we have to take into consideration every single day before we make any kind of balance change at all. Moving on to another statistical tool that we use every day, talent pick rates. Our goal here is to make sure that we have multiple choices at every tier for every hero. We want the heroes to be just as fun the 100th time you played them as they were when you were brand new and just learning their talents. You can see here we're showing you Gazlo's level 1 talent pick rates today. On the left you have extra TNT. This is currently a 43% pick rate, while the other talents on the tier range between 10 and 17%. Now you're saying this doesn't look very good on paper, right? Well, if we look at the associated win rates with these talents, you notice that they actually are all pretty healthy. And in fact, extra TNT isn't even the highest win rate talent on the tier. This lets us know that even though some players might tend to pick one talent more than others, that they're all viable in certain circumstances. To move off of statistics for a minute, we're here at BlizzCon. Let's talk about tournaments and esports. We have the best players in the world here right now. And we're able to use these tournaments to analyze their picks, their bans, and their strategies to hopefully look at what the current meta is doing and to try to guess what the future meta will look like. This is an important thing for us in determining balance changes that need to come down the pipeline and getting those fixes in before this trickles down to the rest of our players. Speaking of players, we come to the most important balance tool we have, your feedback. All of us on the panel, and in fact everyone that works on Heroes of the Storm, spends a lot of our time in the Nexus. This is important. Your feedback that you send to BattleNet, your suggestions and your discussions that you put on Reddit, and even your questions you send to Dustin's Twitter, all resonate with us as not just designers, but players as well. We spend hours every day reading your feedback, discussing it amongst ourselves, and making actual changes to the game based upon it. So please keep sending us your feedback, and we'll continue trying to make the Nexus better together. Moving off of tools for a second, I'd like to go into a couple balance examples and some changes we made and our thought processes behind them. The first one is a few months old. Let's talk about Kerrigan. Kerrigan is a melee assassin. She is an initiator for her team, and she thrives at getting into the middle of enemy teams, doing area of effect damage, and utilizing that to bolster her survivability through her trait, Assimilation. A couple months ago, Kerrigan fell out of competitive play, so we took a look. You'll notice that her win rate was actually at 47.3%. This isn't really on our radar for any major buffs, but when we looked at her talent pick rates, you'll see that she had low talent diversity. We're showing you two of these such tiers today, and you'll notice that both Envenom and Sprint were considered must-pick talents. And unlike the example that I showed you earlier with Gazlo, the rest of the talents did not have healthy win rates. We knew that we could do better. So we sat down and said, let's fix Kerrigan's talent diversity. Let's do it by sharpening her role as an initiator. Let's give players multiple build paths through Ravage and Assimilation talents. And let's make some balance changes to bring her back into competitive play. When the dust settled with Kerrigan, we ended up rebalancing 8 talents. We cut 4 of them completely, and we made 3 brand new ones. Again, I'll show you what her talent diversity looked like before, and then what this looks like now on these same exact tiers. This is a huge win for us. This is something that we're enjoying to do. We've been doing a lot of these rebalance of heroes. You saw some of them come out in the last Warrior patch. We have a lot more in the pipeline that we're working on, and we're trying to get them to you as quickly as we can. It's not an easy process, and it does take time. Last, I'd like to talk about a little bit more pertinent of an issue, something that's happening right here at BlizzCon, something we've been aware of for a little while. Let's talk about our Holy Paladin Uther. Uther, for those of you that may not know, is a melee support hero. He excels at burst healing, and he's got a pretty diverse toolkit that allows him to get in and disable his enemies. When we look at Uther, his win rate is actually 50%. And in fact, it's one of the most stable win rates in the game. No matter what filters we use, no matter what we do to try to change these numbers, Uther stays really close to 50%. But he's always picked or banned in competitive play. In fact, he was picked or banned in 100% of the games on the road to BlizzCon championships for both America and Korea. Europe forgot to pick him in one of their games, but that's okay. So we had to take a step back and ask ourselves, what makes Uther so strong and such a valued pick in esports, but so well balanced across the board otherwise? And we think it's because he disrupts coordination. And this is what these teams do. They're the most coordinated teams in the world. And Uther has multiple talents and abilities that allow him to get in and do some really crazy stuff to the enemy team's coordination. So this is where we wanted to target changes. First thing we looked at, Divine Shield. This is one of Uther's heroic abilities. It is a 3-second invulnerability, and it has a lot of use cases. It is one of the most powerful abilities in the game, and we felt like it was just available to him a little bit too often. So the cooldown has been increased from 70 to 90 seconds. The second thing we looked at, Eternal Devotion. This is Uther's trait. This says that when he dies in battle, he comes back as a ghost for 10 seconds and actually has increased healing output at that point. This has little to no counterplay for the opponents and actually makes them make a very difficult decision on whether to kill the Uther that's chasing their squishies in the backline and let him resurrect as a ghost or ignore him. We felt like the ghost lasted a little bit too long. So the ghost duration has been decreased from 10 to 8 seconds. Now these are pretty minor changes. We are only trying to bring him down a notch in competitive play, as we're really happy with his win rate across the board otherwise. We'll see how these changes do. You're welcome to, they're currently in the build here at BlizzCon, so you can check them out, send us your feedback, and they'll be hitting the Nexus in the next patch. Speaking of things hitting the Nexus in the next patch, anybody out there been able to play Cho'Gall yet? Cho'Gall was very, very difficult hero to balance. A lot of stuff went into it. I'd like to bring up Alex to talk a little bit about that and how he changed one of the core systems of our game.
Thank you, Brett. So who wants to hear a little story about Cho'Gall? Yeah, cool. He's a really interesting hero to balance. He's a really unique guy. But before we talk about his balancing process and through his development time, I want to talk a little bit about who he is, just in case you haven't had a chance to play him yet. So Cho'Gall is actually one hero played by 2 different players. He's a 2-headed ogre. So one head is Cho. He's the warrior of the 2, and he's responsible for controlling all the movement of the 2, and putting his team of him and Gall in a position to really disrupt the enemies. So the other head, Gall, is the assassin of the 2, and his job is to do as much damage as possible by kind of comboing his abilities with Cho, so that this 2-headed ogre that works together. Now what's really interesting about this hero, and presented a lot of the balance challenges when we were first doing him, was that they have 1 health pool. So while Cho has more health than anyone else in the game, about 50% more than any other warrior, if you kill him, you're actually removing 2 heroes from the field. So what we noticed with a lot of our initial play tests with Cho'Gall was, as you can imagine, we don't exactly have an easy time with the first balance on him. If we do someone like Greymane or Lunara, we kind of, okay, we'll start with maybe like a Raynor or Vala template and go from there and make adjustments. But we don't have a 2-headed ogre template in our repertoire. So the initial balance was really interesting. And what we started to notice, actually, was that games with Cho'Gall in them, more often than not, actually really ended in a snowball. But not just for Cho'Gall. In fact, a lot of times they were snowballs against Cho'Gall. And by snowball, what I mean is this idea that you get an early game advantage, an early game level lead maybe, and it becomes a bigger and bigger level lead, and it sort of snowballs out of control. So this is happening a lot with Cho'Gall. So much so that we started to ask, is this just a balance issue with Cho'Gall? What's going on here? What makes Cho'Gall so different from other heroes? So what we started to notice was that Cho'Gall actually really loves power, right? It's this big, angry, power-hungry ogre. What we noticed was that he really loves those stats, and when he gets a couple level leads on his opponent, it's really hard for the enemy team to deal with it. You have this big ogre with a lot of health in your front line, with this Gall assassin there just zapping your team, and you can't really ignore him. And since he had so much health, you would sink everything you had into him. You'd use all of your damaging abilities, all of your crowd control. But it was really hard to get over that hump to do enough to kill him. He had so much health. And investing all of those resources into trying to kill Cho'Gall and failing means that you almost killed 2 heroes, but didn't kill anybody. Therefore, Cho'Gall typically would win those team fights. And it would just further get worse and worse. But what was interesting about Cho'Gall is he actually also really needs that same power. That if he fell behind a little bit, now suddenly that enemy team could use those Snipe and Ravage and Stitch's Hook to just take Cho'Gall out pretty early in a fight. And if he did that, that was crippling for that Cho'Gall team, because now they lost their big frontliner, and actually their Gaul assassin. And also what we noticed is most Cho'Gall teams had to kind of build around Cho'Gall because he was such a unique character. So then his team would fall behind and it'd get worse and worse. So we're presented with this really interesting balance challenge when we're looking at Cho'Gall. Well, how are we going to balance this? Do we buff him and make situations in which he gets ahead even worse? Or do we have to nerf him and therefore make the Cho'Gall player feel really bad when his team's falling behind? So around this same time, we were saying, okay, this is an interesting issue. This snowballing thing we're seeing with Cho'Gall, is this just maybe a Cho'Gall problem? Or maybe we need to look a little bit at our live game and see if it's extended to there too. So what we noticed, and our business intelligence team is the guys that gather a lot of data from the live game, gave us this really great analysis showing that about 65% of our games were really close. So either both teams stayed really even throughout the course of a game, one team got a lead, a small lead, but it wasn't anything insurmountable, or one team got a big lead, but then the other team had a big comeback at the end. So basically, the game was in contention throughout its entirety. And so these were great moments. We love how that felt. We love that feeling of really good competition in the Nexus, and we really wanted to see even more of them. This is what we wanted almost every game you play to be like. And now some snowballs will happen, that's natural, but we wanted to see if we could increase the amount of really close games we were getting. So what we decided was maybe we needed to look at how the stats of our leveling were working. Maybe we need to make some adjustments to kind of the core system of the game. Maybe Cho'Gall is just helping us realize that there's a bigger thing that we want to fix in the Nexus, like a macro issue. So what we did was we widened our scope from Cho'Gall to look at actually all heroes in the game. So here you see an example on the right, the pie chart of how much power a hero accumulates over the entirety of a game. And you can see that over half of it was just from the pure stats gained from levels alone. And that base, which is the stats you started with at level 1, was actually pretty low in comparison. And so this was especially punishing in the early game, since your base was so low and since levels gave you so much power and they were a flat gain every level, that difference between level 1 and 2 was the same increase, the difference between level 19 and 20. So for an example, let's look at here, like a team that's level 9 versus a team that's level 7, which is a pretty common occurrence of when these kind of snowball situations could happen. What you'll see is the team that's level 9 has about 18% more health and also about 18% more damage, which ended up being that they had about 40% more power than their opponents that were behind. That's really hard to deal with. And in fact, this kind of led to a lot of these snowball situations. So what we noticed was the early game levels, they felt like it was really punishing. The level differential felt really punishing. But our late game actually felt pretty good. So what we tried to do was we tried this experiment. A lot of you have seen it with the test map we released with the Morales patch of decreasing the power of levels in general. So now you can see that pie chart on the right that we've almost cut the power of levels in half, the amount of stats you gain via levels in half, and added most of that to the base. So now it's a much more equal representation. You're going to start with a lot more power and gain a little bit less with each level. So you can see in the light blue bars here that now that previous difference that was 40% between level 9 and 7 is now only about 8% health and about 8% damage, which adds up to about 16%. Sorry, there's a lot of numbers, but this is numbers. So that 16% differential is a lot easier to work with than 40%, and we found that team had a better chance of playing from behind. So we started to play test a lot of this to see how it felt. We do a lot of play testing in team, and anything that goes out, we play test for months at a time before we really release it. And we noticed was, yes, that had the goal, accomplished the goal that we set out. The team that was behind could now fight. That 18% power differential, or 16% power differential was overcomable. And while it was still a disadvantage, it wasn't something that you couldn't fight, or you couldn't fight against. Now, a side benefit that we noticed from this, and this wasn't our original intention, but something that we actually really enjoyed, was we found that our roles were sharpened. Since we took the power, some of that power that you got over 20 levels and applied it up front, your character kind of felt more like the character you knew right from the get-go. So Vala felt more like the Demon Hunter right from level 1, and Arthas felt more like that really scary warrior right from the beginning of a game. And this was just a really positive benefit that we noticed. And now this is an interesting thing we observed too, is that while our goal was to help games feel better for teams that were losing, it actually helped the winning team feel better too. Winning now, if you accomplished it, felt much more meaningful. You had to kind of work for your victories more. You couldn't get an early game advantage. and just sort of rest on your laurels throughout the entirety of a game. That making big plays matter just as much in the first few minutes as they did in the later parts of the game too. And it just felt more like this competitive match that you all loved throughout the entirety. So all these things were great. Now, one thing we noticed when we were first playtesting this that we didn't like as much was that it kind of made the early game matter less. And this kind of makes sense because we took the amount of power you're getting for early game levels and reducing it, so therefore all of these things you were, early game takedowns and leads you were gaining just didn't do as much. And this wasn't great for us because we really want to feel like every moment in a match of Heroes of the Storm is really important and really has significance. And if you kind of just can coast at the beginning, it's just not, it doesn't sit well with us. So what we decided to do, and we tried a few things, but we ended up doing was actually increasing the time you spend dead in the early game. So we increased those early game death timers. So this may seem counterintuitive. You're saying, well, you want to make it less punishing to lose in the beginning game, but now you're making it more punishing. But we view this as kind of a shift in philosophy. So where previously, if you got an early game takedown, you would, for an example, you'd be like, you kill an opponent and you take their arm off. Now they're just not going to be as strong as you for the entirety of a game. So instead, what we view this as an early game takedown should be a power play for your team. You get an early game kill, they'll be off the map longer, you can now push down more structures, you can take more mercenary camps, you can get more map objectives. And so you can kind of use all these early game takedowns to sort of further your goal toward ending a game. Get closer and closer to the enemy's core. And that's what we think this is all about. That's what takedowns should give, help you win. So all these things have been really great. And obviously, there's a lot of system changes with all of this. There's a lot of numbers being changed. And we don't take that lightly, and we really didn't want to surprise you all. So that's why we released it about 6 weeks back with the Lieutenant Morales patch. We really appreciate your guys' feedback so far on that. And actually, some of the best feedback we've gotten is when it feels pretty close to what we know. It's like, perfect. We changed every number, and they didn't notice. Awesome job, guys. But this is really great. And so all this is going to be coming with the Cho'Gall update really soon in the coming weeks. So really look forward to even more feedback from you guys. So all these things were awesome, but we have some even cooler things coming in the future. I'm going to hand it over to Matt Cooper to talk about some of our future updates.
All right, so Brett and Alex have talked to you guys about how we identify characters we want to tackle for balance, whether it's through high or low win rates, whether it's through low talent diversity, or just not seeing them a lot in competitive play. So we have a couple characters we've identified. We started to think about what the changes are for them. We're pretty excited about them, so we're going to talk about them here today. Gazlowe. So why are we looking at Gazlowe? Well, we do not see him played very often in esports. We don't see him a lot at high-level events like this at BlizzCon. Now, Gazlowe has this really cool zone control fantasy where he can lock down a location for a long period of time with his turrets, and he should be ideal on a battleground like Sky Temple. So we want to improve this, likely by making some of his talents a little bit more interesting. Some of his turret talents right now, there's one that increases the attack range of the turrets a little bit. It's not that interesting. Another one increases the charge count. So we want to improve this. Couple crazy ideas that we're working on right now. We're starting to test these. I don't know if these will make it. One is the idea that if you pick this talent, while you're charging up your death laser, all nearby turrets will start charging up a laser or some additional attack as well. So if you can get in a location where you have a lot of turrets and you can actually use your laser, it's going to be a lot more powerful. Another talent we're exploring is an active talent. It's a little bit later, probably level 16 or level 20. And when you activate it, Gazlowe starts to rain out scrap from his body. And he has to run around and pick this scrap up. And as he's doing this, he's able to start placing down a lot of turrets. He's able to start using a lot of bombs. So again, that's going to be a key moment for Gazlowe to really own a location. Nova. Nova's talent diversity is not great. That's why we're looking at her. She has a couple key talents that most players pick, and they really bring her to life, but we want to give players more options. Now, one of the challenges with Nova is she walks kind of this razor's edge between competitive and casual play. If she does enough burst damage to instantly kill someone like Kael'thas, you can't really deal with her in quick match, right? you can't really play around the fact that there'll be a Nova there. But maybe this is okay for a team that is, building a 5-man team in competitive scene. So when we're looking at her talents, how are we going to tackle this issue? And one of the things we found is that if we put damage options against other damage options in her talent tree, this gives us a much better indication of how much damage Nova can pick up, and we can actually balance the character better. While we're exploring this, we are looking at this idea of there being higher skill cap talents on her. So one example we're exploring is a snipe talent. Every time she lands a snipe on an enemy hero, she increases the damage of her future snipes. And this can stack maybe 10 times. They can get a pretty large bonus. But as soon as you miss an enemy hero with a snipe, this bonus goes away and you have to start all over again. So again, this is against some other damage options. So if you're a really good Nova player, you're playing a really good game, this is probably an ideal talent to pick. Otherwise, you might want to explore some of the other options. Tychus. Tychus is a little bit more of a traditional balance problem for us. He has kind of a low win rate, and we want to increase this. Now, one of the challenges here is that as we increase Tychus's win rate, we could probably do this through some easy changes. There's likely going to be consequences on other characters. Say someone like Vala. If we were to simply make Tychus better, what does that do to Vala? Well, let's look at who Tychus is and who Vala is, right? They're both ranged assassins. They both have good area damage. They both have a short-range dash. They can both be talented into pretty good single target damage. So if you're a team that is drafting up a ranged character, you say, okay, we need to add another ranged damage dealer on our team. Who are we going to pick? It might be kind of a toss-up between Tychus and Vala, and oftentimes players will probably pick who they think is more powerful. So what we want to do with Tychus is further define his role as a unique ranged assassin. Now, something we've been talking about around the office is this idea that Tychus could be a tank buster. He could be an anti-warrior character. So he's the ideal pick for someone against like Cho'Gall, or if the enemy team has already picked up 2 or 3 warriors, we'll definitely take Tychus because he's really good against that. So how are we going to do this? Well, he has a giant killer talent on his talent tree, which means his basic attacks do bonus damage against targets of higher health. So we can definitely move that talent earlier, maybe add more talents, or even change some of the core parts of his kit. So we're still trying to figure out where we're going with Tychus, but we really like that direction. And of course, those are 3 characters we're currently looking at. There's a lot more. And including events like this at BlizzCon, we get to see some of the highest level play ever. Some strategies we probably haven't seen before. So we'll definitely have some things to talk about at the office come Monday. Now, this wouldn't be a state of the game panel without talking about matchmaking and some online updates. So I'm going to ask Dustin to come up here now.
Hey, everybody. All right, let's talk about the matchmaker. This is a popular topic that we are all discussing quite a bit these days on Reddit, on my Twitter account, everywhere in the world. Now, 80% of our games right now are even in matchmaking. What I mean by that is we assign all of our players a matchmaking rating, or an MMR. And this matchmaking rating goes up when you win games, and it goes down when you lose games. If you win games against good teams, it goes up a little bit more, that sort of thing. And so we can look at all of your matches out there, and we can say, if we're looking at the best player in a match and the worst player in a match, how good is this match? How close are these ratings to one another? And about 80% of our games are in a pretty good place. As we said earlier, 65% of our games end very close on level. So that might mean one team was behind, but then they caught up, or it might mean you were even all the way through. Now, having said this, this means that 20% of our games are bad, that they're launching and the matchmaker is aware that they're bad. As I think we've all seen the screenshots, some of them can go very, very bad, right? You could have rank 1 guys with some guy who's level 14, who's just basically joined the game. These are also averages, so I don't want anybody to feel bad out there if your experience is different from this. This is everybody. This is millions and millions of players and millions of games. So when I say 80-20, there's some poor guy out there who's probably had a lot of his games in that 20%. And there's probably a bunch of us, yeah, it's that guy right there. I'm sorry. And there's a bunch of us out there who are maybe average on skill level, and we've seen most of our games been pretty good. We're mostly in that 80%. But 80-20, this is not really ultimately where we want to be. And obviously we have a lot of feedback on the quality, so I can talk about these numbers all I want. We've seen the feedback. We've seen it, in lots and lots of different places. And Quick Match as well receives a lot of feedback. So I'm talking here about differences in matchmaking rating, but there's also a fair amount of feedback on Quick Match. I got into a game. We were, maybe a bunch of specialists. They had a couple of warriors and a proper support, and we didn't feel like we had the tools that allowed us to deal with that. So things we've done this year that have helped us a little bit already. So when we first started this year, we were doing some things to our new users. We had your matchmaking rating inflate automatically with experience. So when you first come into the game, we have no idea how good you are. So we pick a matchmaking rating for you a little bit low down, not the bottom, but kind of low down, and then we adjust you from there. And one of the things we were doing was we were adjusting your rating automatically, figuring as you learn more about the game, you're probably getting better. We also didn't do anything to match you by games played. These were mistakes that did not work out very well for us, and you can see it in this number. A 38% win rate for our new users is not a great new user experience. We'd love to get that a lot closer to 50-50. So we fixed these two things, and that got us to a 48% win rate for our new users. It's pretty good. That's a pretty good benefit for us. We'll keep these types of changes going forward. I'd love to scrub out that last 2% there, but this is still a pretty positive number at this point. Hero League accuracy is also something we took a lot of feedback on this year. We began the year, rank was a combination of skill and games played. We figured we'd have some required games to play to sort of get you to where you belonged with your rank. It was about 100 games to get you there. This was not a popular direction. We didn't like playing it when we were playing it internally, and you guys didn't enjoy it that much either. So now we're doing more placement matches, but once you finish your placement matches, you pretty much are where you belong to the best of our ability with this current matchmaker to determine. And this has been a benefit for us, and we have some more plans for this system going forward. What we're going to do now, though, is rebuild the matchmaker pretty much from the bottom up. And I'll talk to you a little bit, please, how we're going to do that and what's going to happen. So original matchmaker comes to us from StarCraft. This works pretty well in StarCraft. There's not a lot of requirements on this matchmaker. If you're playing Zerg and I'm playing Zerg, that's cool. If we're in a team game and we're all Zerg, that's totally fine. Who cares? It's not the case with heroes. We can't have 3 Tassadars in one game, unless you're in the arena, but that's later on. So what we want to do is have a new way of matchmaking games that sort of gets away from the StarCraft matchmaker. It works fine for StarCraft, but it's been failing us. And we have a version we're going to do this year, hopefully within the next few weeks. So what the old system did was it tried to build games very quickly. So let's say I got 100 of you guys out here, and you guys just said, go, I want to go into this game. And for purpose of this, let's just, some of you are 4 players, and some of you are solo queuers. Maybe we're in a quick match scenario here, and we're gonna put together a match for you guys. So what the matchmaker is going to do, it's going to pick you guys and put you into 10 games of 10 different players. It's not going to launch those games yet, but it's got you all lined up. We've got 10 games with you 100 people. And then it's going to start swapping. And it's going to swap like crazy. And it's going to say, well, let's start moving people around to see if I can make these matches better. And the matchmaker knows how happy a match is. It's got a little happiness rating on the match that it's going to determine whether this match is a good match or not a good match. And it's going to swap maybe 100,000 times in the next couple of seconds, just juggling you 100 people as quickly as it possibly can to make the best matches it knows how. And as we add more rules, as we make more requirements on this matchmaker, it gets harder and harder for those swaps to produce positive results. It's a complicated way to do it. And the more rules we add, ultimately, the more challenging it gets for that matchmaker to successfully swap. So if you guys are in a group of 4 and you guys are a group of 4, and we say that's important that you guys match together, and there's another group of 4 back there, well, I can only swap a couple of ways to see if that's going to work out. And it can hit dead ends. It can say, look, I just swapped all you 100 guys 100,000 times. I'm done. I've got no more ideas as to how to make this group have a better matchmaking experience. And this is where our infamous 6-minute or now 10-minute rule comes into play. The reason that rule exists is for the matchmaker, when it's run into that dead end, it's like, no, I'm done. I've swapped everybody, what else you want from me? We could basically at that point hold the game for 100,000 years and nothing would ever happen. So we say, all right, after 6 minutes, the matchmaker needs to go. Recently, we changed that rule to 10 minutes. And everybody, including us, sort of thought, man, maybe if we change this to 10 minutes, maybe it'll make better matches. That's intuitive. The longer it takes, the smarter it should get. But that rule was only coming into play when the matchmaker had run out of ideas. And the engineers were telling us when we made this change, they said, this might not change anything. 6 to 10 minutes, it's just going to wait longer now to come to the same conclusion that it doesn't know what to do. And so you guys said, hey, you changed this and nothing happened. Like, yeah, that kind of makes sense now that we see what the system is doing. You can also imagine, as we layer more rules onto this system, in some cases it can become dumber. And so when you guys said, you guys keep changing stuff and my matches keep getting worse, that's possible. That is a scenario that could actually occur with this current matchmaker. Now what the new system is going to do is a little bit different. It's going to build games to be good in the first place. And it's going to have no swapping really involved, and it's going to create a queue. So this is the other thing we get a lot of feedback on from players. They say, hey, I waited a long time. How come my match wasn't better? There was no concept of a queue really in the old system. What we're going to do instead now is we're going to be focusing on you. So if you've been in the matchmaker for 4 minutes, we're all about you right now. We're gathering players around your skill level. And some of these guys we might hold for a little bit. Well, you know, this guy's not optimal for you, but he's close. And in case nobody better comes along, we're going to hold this guy in case we need to launch a game for you. And so having a queue should be a lot more powerful, allowing us to really get some games launched that are better for you guys. And time won't control match quality. Right now, after 6 or 10 minutes, we're launching. This has got to go. The new system will allow us to focus on people who've been in the match, but we can choose when we want to launch. So if you're playing, you know, in Brazil at 4 in the morning and you're one of the highest ranked players in the world, maybe we don't want to wait 30 minutes to get you the perfect match. But that's a decision we can make. The matchmaker will be able to keep thinking about the problem and it won't run into those dead ends that we talked about previously. Now, we've run simulations, and this is pretty cool. So what the engineers have done is they've taken live data from games all you guys have been playing, and they've taken that live data and they've put it through the new math. They said, all right, if those people had been playing with the new rules, what would have happened? And we've looked at the games that actually launched when you guys were playing, and we looked at the games that would have launched through the new matchmaker, and things are way, way better. The number of differences in matchmaking is substantially smaller. The amount of games that launch with the wrong rules in quick match are much improved. It's a much better experience. Now, when I say we're going to launch this in the next couple of weeks, that is not a promise. That's our intent. And I'll be very clear on this. If I get one person telling me you promised on Twitter, I'm just going to lose it. It's our intent. Anything can happen in software. We can find out there's some horrible bug. And we'll get that information out to you as soon as we can. We know this is a huge priority for this game. It is literally our top priority. We talk about it every day. Our intent is in the next few weeks, certainly before the end of the year. And if that changes, we'll update you guys so you know what's going on. All right. For 2016, we have more fixes. These are things that are coming in the future. We want to improve MMR accuracy. There's things we think we can do to be more accurate about the matchmaking rating. I've talked about how we want to make sure that we're getting a good difference in matchmaking rating in a single match, so you're all about the same skill. But if the matchmaking rating itself isn't perfectly accurate, that will affect your overall experience. We want to mirror team composition in quick match. And I'd love to hear more of your feedback on this, but our view of quick match is it wants to be a little bit Wild West. We don't want to force a meta on you guys in quick match. But we do understand that you want to feel like things are fair, that if you got a weird team, so did they. So what we'd love to do going forward is say, if we're creating a weird team over here and you guys are out there, hey, what gets you weirdos to play with those guys is, Gazlo and Sylvanas against a couple specialists over here. And hopefully that will get a game that's kind of unusual and kind of fun, but still feels legitimate and fair. We'd love to get better team MMR. We've got months of data now to look at that lets us know what the advantages are of being in a team, which allows us to better calculate the accuracy of how good a team is when we're putting you guys together. We'd love to use performance to actually adjust your matchmaking rating. So right now, we're looking at your wins and your losses, but we're not saying, hey, you lost, but you played pretty good in that game, and making sure we adjust your MMR a little bit better. Right now, if you lose, you're going down, even if you're the best player on your team. And we'd love to do a per hero MMR adjustment. So we see right now that as you play games, you get better at the game. In fact, I was looking at these guys the other day. I adjusted the win rate by everybody who had played 50 or more games with every hero in the game. And every hero was above 50% win rate, which I think there was a couple that were not, but I was out of my mind, how can this possibly be? I'm like, oh right, I'm above 50 games played with every hero. So basically, if you know your hero, you're gonna do very well. If you don't know your hero, you're not gonna do as well. That seems very intuitive, but the numbers were kind of shocking. So we'd love to get to a place where we're doing a per hero MMR adjustment. Ranked play. We'd love to do some more work on this system as well coming next year. Our original system was a combination of StarCraft and Hearthstone. We liked some advantages of both of those systems. Heroes is a very different game from both of those games. They're both 1v1 games, and that sort of was not exactly where we wanted it to be. The current system is pretty harsh. We thought it would be cool that you could be a couple of games from advancing. At any moment, you could go up. That's awesome. It also means if we want to be accurate, which we do, at every moment, you're a couple of games from going down. It's pretty stressful. It's pretty exhausting. A lot of you have said so, we felt it ourselves. So we'd love to take another crack at this system going forward. We also know there's not enough transparency in the system. There's a lot of uncertainty about why did I go up? Why did I go down? What's going on? And we need to get a system that's got stronger transparency. We're talking about this now. I don't have answers for you today as to what exactly we're going to do. I just wanted you guys to understand we'd experienced what you experienced. We've heard your feedback on this system, and we'd love to do better. We'd love to get a season rolling as well. This is an often requested feature for the game. I think once we get the rank play better, that's when we'll look at a season roll. We're going to be in preseason for a little while. That's just the reality of where we're at, and I am sorry for that. I know preseason feels like that should have been like 2 weeks, and we're going to be a lot longer, be many months in preseason. We'd like to get to sort of a rank 3-0. We did it once. I know we just did it in August. We're probably going to do it again. I don't know how big the changes are going to be, but I'm not scared of big changes here. The system we have isn't that fun to play in. We're going to take another crack at this sometime next year. All right, some more fun stuff. Here's an early look at a death recap screen that we're working on that will hopefully be coming early next year. You can see the last 10 things that happened to you. You can mouse over those things and get a better understanding of what it was that went on, who it was that was hurting you. We're going to put some more information on the screen. This is an early mock-up. The version we have in the office has a little bit more information. It looks way worse, but it is pretty functional. You can also see heals on this screen. So if you're playing Uther, and a Nubarak dies, and he says, hey, Uther, where were my heals? You can say, dude, check the recap. I hit you with everything before you dove in. Hey, maybe dive out next time, not into battle. Bans is something we want to get to as soon as we possibly can in this game. Now, last year we stood up here and said, I don't know, maybe bans, maybe not bans. We're on board with bans. We've been testing bans throughout this year with our esports. The system that we're using right now in our esports is something these guys worked very hard to develop. We've been very happy with it. We don't have a billion heroes in the game. We've got, around, 45 now, I guess we're closing in on. And so we developed this 2-ban system. We have an initial ban at the beginning. We have a ban kind of in the middle. It's very disruptive. It creates a lot of strategy. The pro players we've spoken to have seemed to enjoy it. So we'll try to get this into the client so you guys can play a more legitimate esports experience when you're playing Hero or Team League next year. All right, Grandmaster. This is also something we really want to get to this year. I also should say we're going to take questions. We don't have a ton of time. I'm about done here, so if we've got lineup places, I don't see them out there. Hopefully you guys can line up and answer some questions for us. Grandmaster is something we'd love to get into the game. We've got this in StarCraft. We know right now that if you are the top of rank 1 and you are the bottom of rank 1, there is a significant difference in skill that you guys can feel. We'd love to get Grandmaster in the game. We are doing it right now through the web. We are publishing the top 200 players in your region every month so you can see, and we're testing, is 200 the right number? Should we do more? Should we do less? So we'd love to hear your feedback on that. All right, we've got a last few things that are coming this year. First up, we have the best possible version of talent gating coming to Heroes of the Storm. Thank you guys for putting up with us on this one. We did try to make this system work. It really hasn't worked. I think these guys have done a great job with the talents in the game. As a result, there were too many talents at Tier 3 and 2-4. They were just too valuable, and a lot of players weren't able to get to those. It didn't feel right anymore. It wasn't working. It's gone. Hero rotation this year will go from 7 to 10. We're finally in a place where we've got enough heroes to do this. It was always our intent to go to a 10 rotation. We're finally able to get this to you guys. So again, thanks for your patience on this. We'll get this out to you before the new year. And now we're ready to take your questions. You can ask me, any of these balance guys up here, any questions you guys want to ask. We'll do our absolute best to answer them.
My question are from bullet points, so I'm going to let you guys decide with bullet points. First bullet, real in-game clock and Blizzard Esports TV network.
So you're asking, I'm sorry, I get a little echo up here. You're asking for an in-game clock and a esports TV in the client that actually works. Is that correct?
A Blizzard Esports TV network.
Oh, I see. You can see all this
like
stuff.
Blizzard.
Well, certainly the in-game clock, I think we can get to you. I don't know if I'm in a position to promise you a whole network. Boy, that sounds cool, though. It does sound awesome. I will accept that feedback and make sure I suggest it the next chance I get.
Yesterday I talked about John Oliver, so crazy questions. I'm crazy question guy.
Fair enough. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. So I'm a student of game design at Michigan State, and a couple weeks ago we had a little lecture on balancing. And one of the interesting things that they talked about was that it's not just like the statistics and numbers and all that sort of thing that's actually important for game balance, but it's also player perception. Like I play another game like Chivalry, and that was a while ago, but I remember like the Vanguard class in that game was considered hugely overpowered, and I don't have the information for that, but like that's really important for player perception. And so how do you guys really handle that and try and, like, do you fiddle around with that at all when you're doing balancing and stuff?
Well, you know, it's really interesting. We certainly saw this on StarCraft. There was one famous moment for us in the bullpen where we discussed with the community the possibility that we would balance the warp prism. And this was at a time when Infestor Broodlord was very powerful, and we said, hey, maybe if we buff your warp prism, you'll be able to attack from different angles at the same time, and this very slow Infestor Broodlord composition will struggle. And then everybody went out and started using warp prism, and they started winning games. Like, no, we didn't do it yet. Nothing has changed. And then warp prism started to become a thing. So there's definitely the possibility that player perception could have an impact. And we talk about it sometimes, but we never try to manipulate it or control it in any way. Our audience is simply too plugged in, too smart, too aware, and we would feel too icky about it. So we always sort of focused on, we're going to make what we believe to be true, and we will trust them to figure it out. And that really has rarely let us down. There are occasions where we'll look at the numbers and we'll say, this is okay, and everybody's angry. And we're like, we're going to wait. And either they're going to show us that the numbers are wrong, or they're going to come around and go, okay, actually this is not so bad. And it's always gone one way or the other. Within a couple of weeks we go, oh, our numbers were lagging, this is real. Or, oh, okay, our numbers are okay, now the community's on board as well. But we don't really play with perception. That is a common thing designers talk about, it's all just perception, man. But it's not. You know, you guys are out there, you're feeling it every day, and certainly the communities we have in esports are very quick and capable of knifing through to the truth within a reasonably short period of time.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, stand right here.
Hi, Dustin. First, I want to say thank you for being one of the most communicative Blizzard developers and developers in general that I've
Thank you,
ever.
sir.
I mean,
Thank you, sir.
you've answered like 2 or 3 of my tweets,
Oh,
which
good.
is
Cool.
incredible. My friends and I, when we get together most nights, we usually only manage to get together 3 or 4 people. We're hoping for an unranked draft or to get 3s and 4s back into Hero League. Apparently, we're not alone.
No, that's good. Thank you for asking that question. I totally feel your pain. I play in a 3 or 4 man team as well frequently. Sometimes we get 5, sometimes we just don't. We're also playing every night. So the decision to remove 3s and 4s was largely a defensive decision built around this feedback about the matchmaker. In the last couple of weeks, even the last month, our engineers have learned a lot more about what's going on, which led me being able to get up here today and talk about what we're talking about. My intention at this point would be, and I haven't vetted this with my engineers yet, so this may vary. My intention would be to either, when we improve the matchmaker, to really have a hard conversation about this. Hey, the matchmaker's improved, we're seeing it, we're winning. Can we talk about 3s and 4s in ranked again and see if we can get that back in? If the answer is still no, then I definitely want to hit up unranked draft or some other scenario that solves this problem. Because I totally feel you. It's absolutely concerned. When we did this, we knew there would be a cost, but it was so important that we hit the matchmaker issue. That was our highest priority, and we're looking at this difficult decision. Do you want to damage our 3s and 4s, or do you want to improve the matchmaker? Like, what have we said? We've said the matchmaker is our highest priority. And so that's what led us to that decision. But yeah, if we can fix up this matchmaker, we will have that conversation either about putting them back in, or if we can't, then certainly unranked draft. I definitely feel your need.
Thank you.
Great hat, by the way. Love the hat.
Oh, sorry. I was just kind of curious about what you guys are planning on doing as far as supporting the esports. We have a lot of like outside tournaments and stuff like that, but when you guys are so low on the Twitch, as far as viewers and stuff like that, are you guys planning on doing anything to try to boost those numbers and keep the esports professionals more interested in the game throughout the year? Or?
Yeah, we're absolutely going to try to do everything we can for that. I don't know when the esports team is going to roll out their announcements about 2016. They may have already, I'm not sure. I know they were working very hard on it when we were back in the office. This is kind of a crazy time for us with BlizzCon, so I'm not as plugged in as maybe you would like me to be. But they are going to roll out some stuff. We want to do more for you guys. I see the numbers you're seeing. I understand what you're asking us for, and we will get you some news as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, cool. I just want to see the game thrive because I love what you guys do. Thank you.
Right there with you.
I think the esports scene might be, or the esports team might be talking a little bit about it during the Heroes finals, so definitely watch the matches and there might be more info there.
Hi guys, quick question. Huge fan of the game, over 2,400 games played.
Nice.
Thank you. And I'm a huge fan of Warcraft, and I just wanted to know if there had been any thought about putting in one of the dragon aspects. I understand the models might present a challenge with a full-size dragon, so a thought, and I know you're going to hear a lot of pitches, but a thought was just like the humanoid forms that they have, and maybe an ultimate that they can use that changes them for like 7-8 seconds and makes them more powerful.
I think it's a very reasonable pitch. I think that's something we can certainly talk about and take back to the office with us. I like your idea a lot.
Okay, Ysera's kind of the preference.
Say what?
Ysera, the green dragon aspect is kind of the preference.
That would be your preference? All right, very cool. Thank you, sir.
Hey, so what'll happen often in my ranked games is I will be, oh, this is perfect. Everyone's the same rank, same games played, but then there will be one guy who's like, hey, Brightwing looks like the right pick, but I've never played him ever, and he's not ranked whatever I am right now on Brightwing. He might be that on everything else. Have you considered putting in a restriction to like having a certain amount of games played or a hero level for Hero League?
We've heard that frequently. I don't know what the right answer on that is. I've been hearing more and more of that in the last couple of weeks, and we've been talking about it internally. We want to be very careful about how many barriers we put into play to get into rank play. We're already requiring a certain number of heroes. If we had bans, we have to require more heroes. Now you got to have a certain level. Now we're getting to a smaller and smaller population that can really enjoy ranked. And at the same time, I hear what you're saying, right? Like, I want people who are only good with their heroes stop coming in with Artanis when you just bought him and playing draft with him. What are you doing to me? So I don't know what the answer on that is, but I hear your feedback, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think we might be almost out of time.
Quick question. Melee assassins versus ranged assassins in current meta. We're seeing a lot more of like Valas and Rainers and not much like Butchers and Thralls. Any idea what's going on with that?
So characters like Butcher and Thrall are actually some of our highest win rate characters in areas like Quick Match. I think there is a lot more coordination needed to go into playing a melee assassin because a lot of the times when you get in, that's kind of it. You might need like an Uther on your team for Divine Shield. So I think that's why we see those characters maybe a little bit more in the esports scene. But it's definitely something we're looking at.
One other question. Tyrael's trait, are we going to get that reworked ever?
We've definitely talked about Tyrael's trait and the hero designers as well. We think it's kind of an interesting moment, but it is a potential for something we can change in the future. It does kind of give him a moment of, you know, making everyone scatter and stuff, and he is a warrior. So that's kind of interesting, but maybe we'll do more of that. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for attending the Heroes of the Storm State of the Game panel.